Today, we're going to talk to a second generation entrepreneur who's going to talk to us about wholesaling real estate in today's economy. All this and more with my guest, Rafael Cortez, coming up.
Welcome to the Wealth Through Real Estate Investing Podcast, your source for real-world strategies focused on creating long-term wealth, cash flow, and financial freedom through real estate. Through guidance, tips, and stories of highly successful real estate investors and thought leaders, we provide you the tools to succeed and to reach the lifestyle you always wanted. And now, your host, Dwaine Clarke.
Hello and welcome back for another episode of the Wealth of Real Estate Investing Show. This is your host, Dwaine Clarke, and today we have Rafael Cortez. Rafael is a real estate investor and coach with Wholesaling Inc. Rafael, thank you so much for joining us on the show, and how you doing, my friend?
Pretty good, man. Pretty good. I'm excited. Thank you very much for having me, Dwaine.
Really looking forward to it. Yeah, I actually like your background as well with the rhinos. It's kind of like, you know, strength and power and stuff like that, and your energy and things like that. So I like that a lot. So yeah, I appreciate you taking the time. I was kind of reading through your background. I was really inspired because I kind of love and that's what I'm kind of trying to instill with my kids is entrepreneurship. And I understand that you've been around that for a long time, being a second generation entrepreneur. For the people who are not familiar with kind of your story and background, can you kind of talk about how you got started in real estate and what your current focus is on?
Well, first off, thank you again for having me. It's a pleasure. I started as an entrepreneur in my early 20s. So my background is fire. I used to be a fireman in Yuma County. And we had shifts, right? 24 on, 24 off. So sometimes you would sit there and then think, I mean, there's a lot I could be doing in this 24-hour gap that I have between shifts. So got to talking to one of my captains and brainstormed and eventually launched my first business, which had nothing to do with real estate. It was a transportation business, a medical transportation business. So I launched that in early 2006. 2007 started monetizing and I got into I had that for close to 8 years, but that was kind of like the academy, right, for entrepreneurship for me. I mean, it was the boot camp and everything else combined into this one thing, because I learned everything, from systems to how to hire to how to fire to putting it all together. But it was a really, really cool learning experience. I started playing with, and I mean playing because I didn't dive full, head on into real estate at around 2009, 2010. Actually, 2009, that's when I bought my first property. But I was doing a fix and flip, traditional fix and flip and YouTube University and kind of picking my friends, brains on how to do a flip. And of course, I mean, everything that could go wrong on that first one went wrong. I got lucky. I didn't really lose out on that first deal, but I didn't make money either. And it took me like 6 months of hard work. So when it comes to, time, I did spend a lot of time, but again, it was just another boot camp, right? As entrepreneurs, we go through those, and every single time that we start to get something or get into something new, if we don't cut that learning curve somehow.
Yeah, exactly. And I love how you kind of phrase it with the boot camp, because for me, I kind of call it like, your MBA. I went to kind of similar, house flipping and had, kind of like a reality check where, things don't go as planned and you kind of lose out on stuff. And fortunate for you that you wasn't get hit really hard, but you learned a lot of stuff on the way. Can you kind of talk about kind of like your upbringing, seeing entrepreneurship and how that kind of translated to your latest venture of wholesaling and coaching?
Okay, So as growing up, I my mom was a single mom, and she owned this little grocery store in Mexico, actually. So I grew up in a border town. I grew up on the States, but I went to school for the first few years in Mexico, and then I moved over to fourth grade was actually when I started going to school in the States. But during that time, my mom would go just across the border and then work on her grocery store, and I would see her just kind of put everything together as a single mom, and then just trying to make ends meet, and then figuring things out. And she would hire people, and then she would fire people, and it was a small operation. However, it was putting food on the table. So that, to me, that hustle, I think, was one of the biggest things that became like normal. growing up, I thought that that's how every single household just operated, right? With a single mom, making things work, and then everybody kind of owning their own time and freedom, because that was one thing that I got her to, or that I got to see and learn from her, was that if we wanted to take a weekend off or whatever, I mean, she would do that kind of stuff. And it was pretty cool to me to just kind of own your options, and see that, growing up. So it's something that kind of got burned into my, the way that I do business, the way that I set up, anything that I'm tapping into. So fast forward, I mean, that's really kind of how I started to design the overall business process, thinking from the end. And of course, you grow, and then you start meeting new people, and your perspective expands as you tap into different masterminds, as to, different circles, and make different connections and network. So every time you kind of step into this new world, it's like a new shell just kind of breaks apart, right? And then you're into this bigger world and bigger world and bigger world. So now I see everything at a much bigger scale. However, the principles are still the same. They're still relevant with the mom and pop shop, and the kind of stuff that I grew up looking at, which was own your options. If you put in the effort, put in the time, do it the smart way, things are going to pan out. When you don't know something, ask somebody else, cut the learning curve. There's going to be a lot of things that come at you in entrepreneurship. It's you're going to get thrown, with a lot of wrenches, per se, right? As you're building a business. And I think one of the biggest things is to learn to adapt. For example, I went from transportation to real estate, and I saw the potential in real estate. By the time I sold the transportation business, I had 46 employees. I was managing 46 employees at the time, and it was just a headache. To me, it wasn't the type of life that I wanted to live. And I knew that real estate could do something, different for me in terms of the freedom that I could get back. And when I was putting in all that effort.
So I know you had mentioned that you had your hand in like rehabbing and of course the other types of businesses, but on the real estate side, now you kind of particularly focus more on the wholesaling aspect. Can you kind of talk about for the people who are not familiar with this investment strategy, this business model, what is wholesaling and how has it been able for you to take it to the next level, with all of the systems and the hard work principles that you learned over the course of the years?
Well, I mean, real estate, it's one of those industries where there's a lot of ways to skin the cat, right? So you can start tapping into real estate investments in so many different ways. I mean, do notes, do flips, do buy and hold, and a ton of different strategies. For me, one thing, I've never been a big fan of swinging the hammer. And managing, again, when you're doing a flip, when you're doing a rehab, remodeling a property, you're doing that sort of thing, you have to manage a crew, you have to manage timelines, you have to stay on budget and just the project, every single property becomes a project, right? And it's all great when you have a solid crew. For example, you have them on the payroll and then you have a system in place. That's one model. But to me, what made a lot of sense was understanding that I could make money selling my vested interest in a contract, meaning I'm really good at sourcing. I'm really good at negotiating. So finding a seller and then negotiating a property, of course, providing a solution for that seller so I could exchange a time and convenience for equity, and then negotiating that property below market value. I mean, a lot of times these properties will need, they'll be in financial, or the seller will be in financial distress, or the property's in physical distress. There's some type of issue that we can come in and help them out with, right? But when you do it right, you position yourself into a contract, and then you sell your vested interest on that contract. So on that first flip, and this is really what did it, I remember going through all that headache that I went through on that first flip, right? Because I didn't know what I was doing. I've gotten a lot better at rehabs. I still do them, but now I pick and choose. So, but I went through all that headache, and I think I made about $300 on that deal after 6 months of sweat and tears and blood. So, when I did my first wholesale deal, I mean, I was looking at thousands of dollars. And wholesaling, basically what I did was I negotiated a contract, got it under value. I still left meat on the bone, and I sold that contract to somebody who was going to come in and remodel that property and flip it, right? So I essentially got paid for my vested interest in that contract, and ended up making just under 10K on that first deal, which to me was mind blowing, right? $10,000 for selling a contract. Now the art of it really comes in the process of sourcing the sellers, and negotiating the contract, making it all make sense, but this is one of those things that when you dial it in, when you actually have a process in place, you can create a machine and turn it into an actual business. A lot of people, when they're jumping in, a lot of my students actually, they jump in with the mentality of building a side hustle, right? And a side hustle, it's okay when you're in survival mode. You need that kind of stuff to get you out of that stage of life, but it's not sustainable. So one thing that I always talk about is, instead of building a side hustle, you start building a business, something that you can gradually step back from, and actually build this machine that's going to continue to pay you out. And a wholesaling business, is a lot easier to handle because of the amount of people that are actually playing a part of it. As opposed to managing crews and timelines and listings and realtors and all kinds of stuff doing the traditional flipping.
Yeah, I like that a lot, because you had mentioned kind of like all of the pieces to put together as far as kind of the wholesale, and all of this is derived from the need to get in contact with motivated sellers. So can you kind of talk to, I know there's probably a whole different ways, and I've started to learn recently, different ways you can get in contact with motivated sellers. When I got into the business, it was sticking up a sign, "We buy houses," and getting the list pendant list and sending stuff out. So I know that there's online tactics, there's radio, there's a whole bunch of different stuff. Can you talk about just maybe like a couple that you like, that's been most effective, that you recommend to your students and everything?
Yeah. At the end of the day, it's gonna depend on whether you have either time to put into it or money to put into it, right? A lot of people don't want to go through the elbow grease of going through the sourcing of the sellers. But essentially what you want to do at the end of the day, you're looking for somebody who's going to sell their property. It's a very small percentage of the population. You're literally looking at 3 to 5% of the people who are interested in selling their house. Not everybody's interested. So out of those who are interested, 3 to 5% are going to be a match for a wholesale deal, a legitimate wholesale deal. And there's so many different ways of sourcing those seller leads, finding those people and actually tapping into their issues, their problems, and solving a solution. One of the easiest things to like for somebody who's just getting into it and they want to find sellers, one of the easiest ways to do it is to start building their power team. Their power team really talks about their title and escrow officer or closing agent, depending on what state you're in. And then really building a relationship with them, right? But once you have that relationship and that connection, you can start asking them for particular lists that you can get from them. They're going to give them to you for free because it's in their best interest to help you find deals so you can bring them escrows. And then you can do multiple things with them. Direct mail, postcards, you skip trace. Just the avenues for marketing right now are so broad, right? It's SMS. You have RVMs, depending on how risky you get on that kind of stuff. But it's a different conversation. Mm-hmm. But yeah, it's one of the fastest ways to get big fat lists of solid sellers is going to be reaching out to your power team. And it's a process, right? Building that, the power team and putting it together. It's a process. It's very specific conversations that you got to have with each one of the people inside your power team, but you capitalize on that. Mm-hmm. You tap into their network. Even if you don't have a network, just having one person in your network is going to have a ripple effect, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Yeah, so,
and then,
it's one of my favorite things to do for somebody, or pieces of advice for somebody who's just tapping into it.
And exactly, and it seems like it's something that it's something you can just start. You can find these people, kind of build up your list, and just start with one, and then kind of build a momentum. And you had mentioned, one person may say, "Hey, you actually should talk to this person," and then that also
right.
can add that to your power team, and then that's one element of opportunity that you can get there. Can you kind of talk about the the upcoming opportunities that we're not sure where that's going to lie. We seeing a lot of data with forbearances and financial constraints. We're seeing a lot of migration. People are moving, getting ready to list their houses. Are in of course through the pandemic having a lot of financial constraints. I'm pretty sure that's going to be a lot of opportunities for wholesalers to look at potential deals. Can you kind of comment on the potential there to kind of give some people like some that this may be coming down the pipe that you've been seeing on your end?
Absolutely, man. It's you're tapping into something really, really interesting. There's definitely a shift going on. There's something moving. I'm in the Phoenix market, which is one of the most competitive markets in the country. And just to kind of paint the picture of the volume or the inventory out there, right? I'm also a real estate broker, so I own a brokerage. And traditional sales, a healthy, balanced market where, it's kind of in the middle, 50-50 buyers and sellers. We're looking at about 28,000 single properties on the MLS, right? Right now, single families, I think we're at around 2,700.
Wow. Yeah.
That's how dry it is. So literally we wrapped up a flip. We remodeled this property, we wholesaled it. Which is basic cosmetic remodeling. Put it up on the market. By 3 p.m. that same day, we had 7 offers. One was $22,000 over asking, cash offer, waiving appraisals. I mean, it was just like shut up and take my money, because there's nothing out there, right? So there's definitely room for profits. Now, the reason I mentioned that is because you said something really interesting right now. You said you would put up, put up a sign, a bandit sign, and then we buy houses and people will start calling you, right? That's like those days are long gone. That kind of marketing, it's not working, anymore. It works for certain purposes. For example, finding buyers, it's a bandit sign still work, and you may get a deal every now and then, but you can't leverage your whole operation into that single strategy, because times are different now. Social media is it's one of the biggest things out there. At the end of the day, reaching out directly to people and driving for dollars and cold calling and having a good strategic way of being in front of of them on a regular basis is going to be the solid foundation. But once you have an opening up to the opportunities that are kind of happening right now, because of we have pre-foreclosures and we have forbearances and we have all kinds of stuff that are low inventory, that sort of thing. The quote unquote low ball offers that you need for a wholesale deal are not going to pan out, right? So you have to have different strategies. You have to have different solutions and know how to structure those solutions for the sellers. For example, one thing that we do is we have this algorithm in our company, right? And the same thing I teach, the students. But we have this algorithm. So we start off with a wholesale offer. This is the amount. This is the conversation that we're going to have. Exactly what you're going to say, and break it down. And when you get to this point, you're going to make this offer. Boom. And that's a wholesale offer. Now, if the seller doesn't work, if the offer doesn't work for that seller, you're going to pivot. Okay. You don't just drop it and walk away and say, okay, it's nothing here, because that's a lead. You paid for that lead. You have marketing dollars and there's spend and there's all kinds of effort, put into that lead. So how can you monetize it? We're going to pivot into an option. So it's a different strategy, right? So from that wholesale, we pivot into an option, and then we frame it in a different conversation. If the option still doesn't work because the different amount, it's a little higher than the wholesale offer, we'll pivot into a creative financing deal, right? So that's, 3 solutions right there that we're, putting on the table for the seller, depending on the amount, depending on the pain point that we're trying to solve for them, and the conversation that we're having. But you have to go through this discovery process in order to find out what fits them best. And then last but not least, if nothing else works, if we can't make it, work with, one of these strategies, we also own a real estate brokerage. We can give you a discount on the listing, and we become that resource, right? So instead of locking deals in one single, standard way, which is kind of like the cookie cutter way, I think the mistake of leaving a lot of deals on the table is happening right now, because there's no people are really not tapping into different ways of structuring deals, or as much as they could, you know what I mean? So we have, 4 ways that we come in, and this is, at the basic overview of it, but we have basically 4 ways, that we can structure deals, and that instead of, closing 25% of our deals, we'd be closing 100, you know what I mean? So it just gives us, that many more opportunities to come in and then do something right for the seller.
Yeah, I love that, because when I was learning, wholesaling, and people are teaching me, they was just like, cookie cutter way. We had we call it Mayo, maximum allowable offer, and if it didn't fit there, then it's like that was it. I mean, depending if it was like a pre-foreclosure, then we'll kind of see if we can do something creatively. But for the most part, it was like, now you're just adding so much different opportunities, so you can get help the seller for one, and then also be able to do a deal. So that's right. Just amazing. So I like that. And then with that said, for some people, when I first started out, I had kind of some training classes, but someone not really holding my hand in that process, or someone to bounce the idea off and saying, this offer didn't work out, and then have someone say, hey, why don't you try this? So can you kind of talk about the importance of coaching and how it was able to help you, as well as, avoiding mistakes and, taking something to the next level, and even thinking of things that you never even would have thought of before?
Well, I mean, man, I can tell you, I was the first one to be stubborn as heck when it came to coaching and paying somebody else to cut the learning curve. I figured I could do it. I could go to YouTube University, Google things out and questions and all that stuff. But it's, and yeah, I mean, all the answers are out there somehow, some way, right? But I think that when you have them in a single place, it's really gonna cut the learning curve. It's gonna cut the time and effort that it takes for you to figure things out. Why? Because they've already been figured out. And if I were to, start all over again and do it all over again, I would definitely start with coaching. I didn't start paying for coaching or masterminds or any type of growth aside from books until maybe 4 or 5 years into business. And I'm telling you, man, it's one of the biggest the advances or the leaps that I would have made during that time. Would have been a lot more, and I would have spent a lot less in mistakes. So, I mean, that is one of the things, it's one of the things that happens. Now, one other thing, and I'm thinking of the mastermind, type of model, right? Which is kind of that's really how I run the coaching. It's not all my perspective. It's a collective environment. We have a community, and everybody contributes to it. So, but it's when you have this, you have, if you have 10 people that you can reach out to, you have 10 perspectives that are going to be different. You have 10 different, types of looking at it, or 10 different ways of looking at a problem, aside from just, that one, or sitting there for 2 hours and trying to figure 3 ways, you know what I mean? So you have that much, more of the road paved out for you, because it's you're tapping into different brains. You're tapping into, and I'm a business psychologist now. It's my career, and then that's where I kind of leap off with a lot of the coaching and the consulting, that's why I have this that much emphasis on perspectives and ideas, and tapping into different people and their talents, and putting it all together into one single place, because it's not just learning from videos. It's actually having those conversations. It's figuring out, okay, cool, if I can't structure this deal like this, what else can I do with it? And you start just kind of like changing your software per se, your thinking software, and you start looking at deals differently. All right, cool. I can tell you, if I wasn't around the people that I am now, I don't think I would have the creativity that I have now when I'm by myself. Just because you learn to think differently. And that's part of not just the coaching, but it's part of being part of a bigger group.
Exactly. Yeah, I like that a lot. Yeah, like I said, that would have transformed my career if I had started out, and luckily everything kind of worked out the way it is, where I'm kind of in my little niche now. But like I said, if in your particular instance with wholesaling and creative real estate, it's like it's such a game changer to have a coach or other like-minded individuals on your side. So yeah, I appreciate you sharing that.
Absolutely.
And I know we had kind of talked a lot about your background, kind of learn about you and your upbringing. Can you kind of take us through, because I know you say you do the consulting and your business and everything. Take us through a typical work day, and do you have any special morning routines?
I do. I like to call them rituals. It's semantics, right? But it changes. So I try to stick to a routine, which was doing the same thing over and over again. It got boring real soon. However, the structure of the time blocking is still there. I'll wake up. My day usually looks like this, right? I'll wake up around 6, and then I have a period of connection. This is when I sit with myself and I do meditate, and I do the internal connection every morning, and I do it from around 6 to 7, and it's not the whole time sitting there and kind of just it's not that type of deal. I'll sit and breathe and work on my inner thoughts for a period of time, and then from 7 to about 8, I have a creative time block, which is where I'm in the process of writing a book on systems, and it's just like when the creative juices start flowing in. It's early in the morning, it just works for me, and I need that to operate. I'm the guy that if 3 p.m. kicks around and I'm swamped with tasky stuff, I'm still thinking about the creative stuff I wanted to do in the morning. So it's just a way to kind of get it out of my system. And then from 8 to 10, I do growth, which is personal growth and health. And that's when I jump into my gym and then, work out, throw on an audiobook. It's 2 hours. So I'll work out and then I'll sit down and read as well. And my day actually kicks off at around 10:30. But that's when I go to town, 10:30 to about 6 p.m. and then disconnect. You gotta make sure that you have that R&R. Exactly. That disconnection. And the hustle it's all fine and dandy, but there's only so much bandwidth that we have, mentally before we get tired, we get exhausted, before your productivity levels or your optimal levels start dropping. That's really what it looks like for me. And in terms of business, I run 4 companies, which is Pulse Capital, which is my wholesaling business and flipping business, CEO Pulse, which is my organizational psychology consulting and coaching, and Pulse Realty and Associates. That's 3 businesses, and I do Wholesaling Inc. Coaching as well for wholesaling. And through the day, I just make sure that I time block for those different activities. I actually take a couple of different days throughout the week to dedicate to each one of those companies, and it works. I mean, I have a good solid team that keeps me updated on KPIs and processes, at the end of the day, like, it really comes down to you being aware of where you stand mentally, right? And then having that support structure behind you in terms of the operating systems and the people that are gonna allow you to play that way. It took me a long time to get it dialed into that, to this particular level, but it's so worth it. It's so worth it.
Absolutely. And then you balancing all of the businesses, your personal health and all that stuff. Any tools or resources that you use, electronic or physical, that help you be more productive and communicate with your team?
As far as communication, Slack it's one of the platforms that we use the most. So and that's SLACK. It's a free platform messaging. I use Podio. I actually use Podio. I developed an operating system for Podio, which that's how I run my wholesaling business. But I also run the other businesses through similar operating systems. So we have that as far as KPIs. We have scorecards. Basically different methods of accountability. And as you start growing the team, you want to have accountability, not necessarily micromanaging, but ways to have people be accountable, to their tasks, to the stuff they're supposed to be doing, or they're required to be doing, right? So we have those. One thing that really keeps me sane is going to be Todoist. I know there's a stigma behind checklists and tasks and stuff like that, but it's a really quick way to just kind of jot down whenever a thought pops into my head. We're not really wired to retain information, to memorize a lot of things. We're wired to process info, right? And Todoist helps me to just kind of put it in a fast, in a quick little space. And Evernote, my Evernote it's insanely filled with notes, and sometimes I go to town on that thing and write 3-4 paragraphs on a train of thought. So there's just different ways, but at the end of the day, it's kind of trying to keep my my mind clear of, oh, I got to remember this. Oh, because those are just open loopholes. And at the end of the day, all those little loopholes add up, and then they build into this, stress level that we're just kind of adding on a regular basis.
Oh yeah, totally agree. Yeah, I like a lot of those systems. I use a lot of those similar systems, and like to just keeping the stuff off the brain so you can focus on things and like not have to remember. That's awesome. And then finally, I know you had mentioned like you have like your morning time where you kind of reflect and think and meditate. Can you kind of talk about a little bit about gratitude and what you're most grateful for?
Well, I mean, of course, I'll speak for myself on this. It's, family, health, and, and the opportunities really, right? And that's one thing that I always go back to, every single morning. One thing though, that I'm really, really grateful for is the gift of staying curious. I see it as a gift. Right. And it's easy to get, as you get, more and more into being, doing the tasky stuff. It's easy to get caught up in the day and then forget about curiosity, forget about, the wonder of life. And it's one thing that it's a constant every single morning, right? The question of what if, the question of and it's not coming from a lack of fulfillment. It's coming from a space of curiosity, of the, I wonder if this conversation took place. I wonder if I did this in the business, what would happen? What new opportunities would open up? And it really, my gratitude for a sense of curiosity, I think is really one of the things that keeps the engines going, because it keeps me motivated every single day. Every single day I have, like a little new, space to play with. And it really all comes back to being grateful, and then staying curious.
Absolutely. Very well said. I like that a lot. And then finally, what's the best way to get in contact with you?
Instagram works perfect. If you guys need to get a hold of me, it's going to be Rafael.CEOPulse, CEOPULSE. That's my handle. Shoot me a DM. Also, if you guys are interested in sitting down and talking about coaching, you can go to wholesalinginc.com and then set up a call with one of our guys. And if it makes sense, they'll walk you through the whole process. And if it makes sense, we can, sit down and then start working together on that. So.
Awesome. Rafael, it was a pleasure to speak with you, and look forward to continued success. Best to you and the family, and look forward to having you back on the show another time.
Absolutely, man. You name it.
Absolutely. Thank
Sounds
you so
good.
much.
Thank you so much, Dwaine.
All right. Take care,
It's
my
been a
friend.
pleasure.
Thanks.